Okay, so what I'm going to be doing is kind of relate to what you just did with the reading passage. All right, and what I'm going to show you on the screen is basically like a manuscript that I work on in terms of publishing as a book eventually, maybe hopefully toward the end of this year. But I guess I want you guys to sort of see it. Many of you already seen the abbreviated version before. You know, whenever I start the class, I have this a little sheet that I provide very basic frame of mind that you guys need to have in order to attack the questions, right? So I guess this should be familiar to you, those who joined us like before, but totally new to, those of you who just begin to take the class today or last week. Anyhow, this is a longer version. And I thought about reading the manuscript to you guys, and it's going to be boring as hell. So I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is to sort of describe what I want you guys to remember. The thing is that read the blurb if one is provided. I mean, that's like always the key. So before you guys actually attack the question or answer the question or start reading the passage, right? You need to think about the blurb. Blurb is something that is provided for you, almost automatically, right? So it's something that you should have seen when you're dealing with this passage, right? So blurb is always here in the beginning, okay? So this blurb says this passage is adapted from Gifford Pinchot, The Fight for Conservation, originally published in 1910 in etc. Right? So I guess a lot of people just like read it and then okay, this is about conservation and then move on, right? But I want you guys to sort of focus on what that blurb actually is saying, right? There, I guess like obviously you have this guy name here, and then the title of the book, and also when it was published, and then I guess like what the guy is about. The guy is actually I guess the first head of the United States Forest Service, right? So there are a bunch of stuff that you just like glance, and then if you move on, you're not gonna really take I guess like much of information. So what would a guy would say about conservation who is leading United States Forest Service, meaning forest of department that will actually protect the forest, right? Or provide service for forest, basically. And again, I guess you already did the questions to make it easier for you, right? So I guess some of you have a better idea and some of you not. But what I'm basically saying is that this is like what you need to, I guess, like do. Read the blurb and think about what that blurb actually saying. All right. And then like in the I guess the blurb, I kind of say something about okay, what does it mean to be to read something about conservation? What is conservation? Conservation is conserving the forest. What is conserving? To protect, right? So FIFO, I guess a conservation basically means protecting the I guess the forest basically. And I told you about what the 5-4 means. It's a struggle for goal or an objective. So goal of like this passage is to put forest, and this is basically longer version of what I just described to you when you're reading the blurb. So you gotta pause for a minute, and this is very important even for Bailey, Caitlin, Harriet. Good to see you, Harriet. And then Joel, right? Helen, who've been here for a while. Daniel, and also Timothy and Jonathan, Lena, you also need to remember this. So when you read the blurb, you need to think about, okay, what is this blurb is saying to me? What is the information I could have? So stop for a moment and think about that. Not just like read it casually, right? But you got to really think about that. And this is like what the passage is saying. So again, now I'm gonna make it easier for you guys. So this is all about conservation, and then I guess like protecting the forest. So whatever you have to do, right? So rather than like reading it like this, okay, so I read the blurb, and then again, and by the way, I guess there's something that is missing. I strongly encourage you guys to start answering the question after reading the blurb. And some might say, okay, and someone who is used to be a good reader, I know Helen, who's been here for a long time, still insists on reading a whole lot and then start answering the question. I mean, that's her way, and she's improving steadily. So I guess who am I to argue with that? But what I'm saying is that if you're just starting out and then also finding yourself running out of time at the end, I want you to read less and have as much time as possible reading the questions and answer choices. So I guess like the ratio is not 50-50. Spending about like half given time in reading the passage and then answering the question, reading the questions and then answering the questions. It had to be about 6-40, 60-40, or 70-30. Meaning I want you guys to spend majority of time reading the questions and looking at the answer choices, not the reverse, because typically people spend about 70-60% of time reading the passage. Not the best way to attack difficult questions in the SAT or the ACT. So anyhow, I want you guys to sort of read this and then start attacking the questions. So think about this. When you're like reading everything here, it's going to be like kind of confusing in a way, right? But if you remember about what the blurb said, it's about conservation, right? You have to focus on A and D. First of all, A, because it says conservation, right? So think about it. When the question is asking you about the central claim, basically main idea, and then you already stated where in the blurb is about conservation. If you only think about the blurb, C will be really attractive choice, or that you could see clearly. But if you start reading the passage and all that, there are a lot of stuff that they're going to talk about, and then you might not see C clearly as other choices. And I guess some good reader, and again, if you're just starting out and then like you're getting only about half right, C is a very comfortable choice. Choose C and move on rather than spending any more minutes and looking for a choice that may not be the answer. But if you're a good reader and then wants to do really well, not make a silly mistake, I guess that D could be an attractive choice because of natural resources. So your brain needs to sort of perceive as this. A and B is much of nothing because it doesn't really relate to conservation. C is very attractive. D, natural resources. Yeah, natural resources is something that we need to protect, so maybe. Right? So you got to eliminate A and B and then maybe think about C and B. Now, 29. And again, I guess like we have C and D here. Conservation is necessary to ensure a prosperous future. And D, America had to use natural resource at an elevated rate to gain its current wealth. So C is about actually saving the forest for the future, whereas D talked about we need to use a lot in order to, be rich at the present moment kind of thing. Which will be the answer if you think about fight for the conservation? Obviously, it would be C, right? C is the answer. So this is my point. I'm sure most of you got C. Well, how did you get it? If you got it by reading the passage and all that, that's like fine thing. Well, okay, good to see you, Scott. What I'm basically saying is that there's an easier way. And I'm going to show you why that is very important later. So again, This year we have a lot of students who really did well. I have one student, Edward Lee, is going to be a senior next year, right? Some of you might know. He got 36 in the ACT, straight out 36, perfect score. Another senior, soon to be senior, John, he got 36 super score. Also, it doesn't really matter sometimes whether you get a 36. Either super score means like you combine best scores from your previous test, right? And then we have a bunch of students who got 35, either super score or straight out in ACT. And so that's why we're going to focus a little bit about ACT in the summer as well. But basically the concept of like attacking the question is the same as the ACT or the SAT. It wasn't the case before, but I guess since 2016, it is. So I guess like something that you could apply on the SAT that we're talking about today could be applied, I guess like later. And then I guess on the SAT side, again, Edward got 1580, which is really awesome score because like all the top schools, 75 percentile is like about 1570. So if you get 1580 or 1590 or 1600, you're like doing way better than top applicants who are applying to that particular school or who actually got into that school. So no one could say, oh, your SAT scores were low. That's why you didn't get in. No one could say that. You got 1580, right? But my perspective is they spend a lot of time preparing and taking the class and stuff like that. But my perspective is that what if he could have gotten like 1600 on the SAT, and 30, he already got 36, right? So that's my perspective. If you have the ability to be there where I guess like maybe he's like not sure about a couple of questions, and again he did well, but I don't think he quite followed the method that I've been telling him to follow, even the test he just took in May, even though he got 1580. So as an instructor, as a person who kind of like been this since 1995, like years before you guys were born, and then I had raised two sons who are already like in college or about to start college, right? And my son who's in the first year of college got 1600 super score. He got 1800 800 a couple of falls ago, fall of 2019. But I want him to just take the damn test and get 800 on the reading and writing because he's been getting 800 on practice tests before. And finally, he was able to get it. I have another son who's like going to start youth ComSci program this fall, and he got 1570 last September, right? So since he got into school that everyone is kind of like wanting to go these days, that I didn't force him to actually take the test again to prove that he could do it, because he also gotten 800 in reading and writing a couple of times as well. What I'm saying is not about me boasting about my students doing well. What I'm basically saying is that because I know, watching my kids, watching some students who are like came here when they're 6th grade, right? And then actually develop in a way that they could get like near perfect score every single time they take the test, right? That I know that your brain, your young brain, right? Sometimes you get it, but you really don't get it. That's why I'm kind of emphasizing this point, that you really need to start thinking about not the way you're very comfortable like solving the question, but something that is new, but will be very effective in getting the right choice, right? So I want you guys to improve but improve in a way that, not by taking the test over and over again, because naturally, even a dummy could, improve the score if that person takes a test every single week for a number of years. But we just don't have that, right? Time or, energy to do that. What I'm saying is that I want you guys to just look at the answers that way, right? And again, and there's many ways why C is the answer, but that's something that you need to think about. I want you to see it this way too, because again, the next question is this. Over the course of passage, the main focus shifts from, right? And then if you notice, I kind of changed the wording of it because I don't want to infringe on the College Board's copyrights. So, because since this is going to be published, I don't want to just, say things verbatim, word for word, right? But you get the idea. So again, you have tons of things to consider if you're just reading it like this. But you know that this is about conservation, and this is about, saving natural resources, right? Because conservation basically means saving natural resources. You have to sort of look at the answer choices this way. A, much of nothing, because it doesn't really talk about conservation or natural resources. And then C doesn't, so you automatically eliminate that. B and D. So what I'm basically saying is that read the blurb and actively look for something that relates to that blurb. And you're going to be left with B and D. All right. So let's take a look at B and D more carefully. All right. So here we look at B and D. B says acknowledgement of the benefit of America as enjoyed by depleting natural resources to a call to use those resources more wisely. And D says appeal to America's sense of duty to conserve resources, to examining the danger of failing to conserve, right? So we have B and D. So I guess B and D, I mean, there's you could decide either way, B and D, right? And I'm going to show you this to you a bit later, but rather than saying, or going back to the passage and say, what is this? I want you guys to think about this note. So if you're not really sure, you got to think about this. I'm going to talk about this a bit later, but things that generally make answer choices incorrect, right? It's like this, having extreme words or negative meaning, and then suspiciously looking exactly like what you read from. But, that isn't the case. But focus on this, having negative meaning here. So again, B talks about acknowledgement of the benefits of America has enjoyed by depleting natural resources to a call to use those resources more wisely. D, appealing to America's sense of duty to conserve resources to examine in the danger of failing to conserve. So aside from what you've read, if you're not really sure, and this is a very key thing, oftentimes you guys will be left with a couple of choices. And lots of time, back in when I was start teaching in 95, students always tell me, oh, how come I always make the wrong choice out of 2? You know why? Because the College Board, ACT, spend a lot of money. They get a lot of money from you. Think about it. You're taking a test that is 3 hours long, but how much do you think it will cost to hire people to proctor the test or rent out a space to have people to come in? Not a lot, not a couple of dollars per student, but they're taking in $55 every single time you take the test. That's a lot of money. And they're non-profit organizations, so they shouldn't make profits. They need to reinvest and, promote, education and all that kind of stuff. So even though they charge a lot of, they charge a lot of money, therefore they invest a lot of money to develop this type of test. That, when you're like debating between two, that they're somehow designed so that you choose the other one, that you're drawn to it. So what I'm basically going to say is that it's not going to work all the time, but again, it's not going to be 50-50. If you're debating between B and D, and if you choose what you think is the right choice, your chance of getting that question right would probably be about 25%. So 1 out of 4 times, you got to get it wrong. Whereas like if you just like, close your eyes and, not think about what B is saying or D is saying and just choose randomly like B all the time, it will be about 50-50 because it's random choice, chance, right? But if you think about what I'm saying to you now, right? Again, that's why I have Helen, Bailey, Scott. Even Scott did well on the last week's test, and Helen did well as well. But I still see you guys, doing your old thing. That's why you guys are here. Just think about what I said. So between B and D, what sounds negative? Well, I guess hopefully you should recognize danger of failing to or whatever, right? So again, people could argue, oh, that's not necessarily negative. It's about like warning people to conserve, right? You could have a lot of debate on this kind of thing. And I remember talking to the student for like 40 minutes, trying to convince him that he doesn't necessarily have to read everything. And that was back when I was teaching students actually older than I was. Because I started teaching when I was about like 25, 26. And then I guess like I was teaching students, some students who are from Korea. And then I guess they're about to start school in America, in the States. And then they're about to start graduate schools. So a lot of times, guys from Korea who graduate from college, right? They will be like at least a couple of years older than I was. Because they had to go to Army, and then sometimes they need to sort of repeat the entrance exam a couple of years or whatever, right? So sometimes I have like students who are like 5, 6 years older than I was, and then sometimes like, maybe a couple of years. So I cannot really discount what they were saying, so I had to convince them in a way. So literally, I would spend like 40 minutes across the entire class trying to convince them, okay, you could sort of like solve the problem this way, right? Whereas like now, I guess like, again, I'm sure some of you might sort of doubt what I'm going to say, what I will say, but I've been doing this for a while. And again, I have, students who who did really well, despite the fact that they didn't really listen to me 100%. I had one guy, right, who got, again, he's from Caniac. It's been a while, but he got a perfect score after getting 1,500 on the PSAT. And then I guess test he took, the first test he took, I guess like following the summer that when he had a class with me, he got 1,550. So that was like, I guess he got 1,540 actually, right? It was kind of disappointing because back then 1,550 was like ultimate like score. He went up to 1,580 these days, right? So he got disappointed. So I guess like, he wanted to take the class, take the test again. So before he did that, I tutored him, literally, not a class, but, tutor him. And then I kind of noticed that, again, he's making the other choice. He will always end up like getting 1 or 2 wrong, sometimes 2 or 3 wrong, right? So I told him basically, go with the other impulse. So only thing I did with him is to point out why the other option might have been the better choice. Or straight out, if you're not really sure, just eliminate what you think is the right when you're struggling with making a choice, and then hopefully that will do the trick. And lo and behold, the last test he took, he got everything right. So I didn't want to jinx it. So I didn't want to go over anything with him. I just sent it home. And then, luckily he got 1600. Ran that. I did help him, but without his intelligence, without being able to sort of like follow through what I've been saying to him, right? That short amount of time is something that I guess like got him that 1600 outright. But again, I kind of knew him since when he was like third grade, because I had a little class with younger students. I don't usually have class like that, but since I had two boys growing up, so I guess like my younger son was like in the first grade going up second, and then I have other son who is going up second to third. No, second to third, yeah. So he must have been third to fourth or whatever. So anyhow, I had like three students who were like that. And then I guess he came back for summer class. And then when he was in seventh grade and he got like a respectable score. And then he came back, the summer before his senior year. What I'm basically saying is that, sometimes if you have a given intelligence, right? And then be willing to, or humble enough to listen to, what I have to say, and then actually follow through, you're gonna get that score without being here like for a longer time. But again, what I'm basically saying is that you need to look at B and D, and then maybe eliminate D because B just sound better. Why? Because it doesn't have that negativity or gives off this positive vibe. Even though that might sound really kind of strange to you guys, but that's how you need to look at it, rather than thinking about what the passage actually said. And this is what they're saying. This is what is basically it, right? So B is the answer. All right, and now, yes, I do want you to start answering the question after the blurb. But if you insist on reading something, I want you to read the first sentence, right? So read the first sentence of the passage, because they will give you a good idea of what the passage is going to be about, right? Why is that? Because oftentimes when you're like learning how to write an essay, right? What will teacher say? Teacher will say that you need to write an introductory sentence, right? Topic sentence, to let the reader know what you're going to talk about. So obviously, SAT passages are like model passages or model writing, right? Something that, I guess they thought was a really good piece of writing. So therefore they use those passages, right? So oftentimes they'll sort of follow that through, except for narrative, like, piece of a fiction or that you have to read. So lots of times, if you read the first sentence, you kind of get what the passage is going to be about, all right? So I guess like the first one, this one we don't have, so I'll read it to you. Researchers studying brain size and mental ability say there is evidence that education shields the mind from the brain's physical deterioration, right? So if you read the first sentence, I guess like you don't have to read a whole lot to get what the major assumption of the passage is, or basically what the main idea is, right? So again, the first sentence talks about studying the brain. And then that also has to do with education. And then that education will do what? Shield the mind from brain's physical deterioration. So what you have to sort of look at is like, emphasizing the point. Brain size, mental ability, mind, all that, right? So what do you get? Again, I didn't really give you a chance to read this stuff. Your reading skill sometimes already have it. You do it without thinking about it, but that's how you have to sort of like consider. Okay, so about brain, A talks about brain, good. How about B? Well, education plays a key role in maintaining a healthy mind throughout one's life. But what something is missing? Maybe brain doesn't really have anything or whatever, right? So I guess like I'll eliminate that, because it is about brain size, mental, and mind, right? And then C talks about mind. Yeah, I kind of get it. And then D talks about person's levels of learning can affect the rate of brain shrinkage. Okay, so this one is about brain, so that's good too. So let's focus on, like this. So you eliminate that and then think about all this. Now, this is why you need to have a good vocabulary, right? I don't know whether I have it here or not for people who's going to, I guess, like take the class later. So I guess I'll just like show you. I'll show you what we just did last Saturday or this Monday. All right, so I'm going to be using this type of file, right? And then, I'll be sort of explaining to you using the screen. And then make sure you guys get like that vaccination, get vaccinated so that you will be able to come in class in person. But even when you're in person, I'm going to use I guess, like the TV that I hang up on the wall to show you the screen, right? And then you're going to sort of like have words in blue. So extract means to get, obtain, derive, and then derive means to get, obtain, extract. So I guess I used to provide vocabulary lists. So I'm sure like Bailey and Caitlin and others, they already know that. So I used to provide, vocabulary lists like this. Bunch of words there. Yeah, I literally had my students like study like crazy and all that. So, and then I guess eventually some of the words they studied, but it takes another kind of brain to sort of actually know it and then use it. So I no longer sort of provide this stuff to students, but I do want to provide, basic, guide in terms of improving your vocabulary. So you're going to have few words, like maybe 20, 30 words tops, whereas like before it was like, more than about, 100, right? But I want you guys to sort of memorize the words that you don't know. Again, we have exacting. Some of you might know the word exacting, but some of you will not know the word judicious. It means someone who is wise, right? So if you did not know the word judicious, don't let it pass and then having to say, oh, I've seen that word before, but I don't know. You got to memorize it. The reason why I'm saying that is because whenever you go through, I guess, like a test and then start memorizing that, that will be really helpful in terms of, doing better in ACT or SAT. So somehow, I guess, like, if you could relate. So there aren't a lot of stuff to eliminate if you don't know the word deterioration. Even if you know, I guess you got to sort of use it and then maybe use that to say D is the answer, because it's about education. It's about learning. Deterioration, shrinkage, right? So remember what I told you about this? Repeating exact words from a reading passage or the question, right? So here, typical correct choice will look like D. Even though it kind of repeat the word brain, A and D, and also had the word mind in C, right? Or even education here, education. But as long as you recognize, I guess, words that was stated here, so you could sort of say education and learning and shrinkage and deterioration, and you're conscious of it, you're gonna get that question right. D. So this is it. I know, I guess some people who are, again, born with good brain, let's say, that could incorporate all this stuff and process it without really ever thinking about it. So when they seem, okay, this is the right answer, it is right answer because you, like that person is processing whatever I've been telling you now naturally. So without consciously knowing about it, that is the right answer. That's why somehow, out of blue, you get a person who gets perfect score or near perfect score without ever trying. Right? I guess there's a I guess a person who wrote I guess like a SAT prep book. I guess the complete guide to reading, SAT reading or something, right? Or ultimate guide. But anyhow, I guess it's a fairly decent book. A lot of people, I guess, like buy it and stuff like that. And then I was like reading off from her experience. I guess she got like perfect score in like SAT reading, right? And then, so I guess like she did fairly well. So she decided to sort of like, tutor kids after college and all that. And then she was very terrified. Even though a person who got a perfect score on the SAT in high school, but when she had to explain why the answer was, like when she was actually getting paid to tutor kids, she couldn't really explain it. She knew the answer, but she gotta, sort of like logically explain why that is the answer. You know what I mean? So that's when I realized some people who have an awesome brain could incorporate that without thinking about it. What I'm telling you guys is that this is the process that your brain is doing. So when Jonathan got only one wrong, right? In the TOEFL reading that I gave in last week, right? He's incorporating everything like that in his brain, maybe. Well, he got one wrong. And I'm going to show him why that would not be a kind of question that he should have gotten wrong based on what we've been doing today, later. Right? So I want you guys to think about this a little bit. So education, deterioration, why? D is the answer. Even though they repeat the same word, you have a couple of words that reflect what the first sentence is saying. So D is the answer. And again, this is actually a paragraph that lasts until line 11, but I'm not showing you that because if you read all the way down to line 11, some of you will get confused and choose something that is stupid, maybe like B. You know what I mean? All right. So this is it. I'm showing you why, because they're talking about deterioration of mental ability, education, actual experience, more brain shrinkage. Everything that the first sentence said is basically repeating it, except that like some of you who are lacking, like the reading comprehension skills might get confused with other things. So even though the rest of the paragraph talks about what the first sentence said, it's basically a waste of time because that's what the author is trying to say, right? Now, again, when you are starting out answering the question, my advice is that you need to read questions first. Maybe that will be very helpful. Because if you read questions, you will know what should be, what are important in the passage according to quote unquote the test creators or test makers, right? But that's basically it is. You're actually solving question that the test creators think or College Board think or ACT think is important, something that you got to understand or have a proper understanding of. So it's very important to just read through the questions. And again, this is the paraphrase version of what you just had to go through. But there are a couple of questions. It's about environmental conservation, for more conservation. So when you read the blurb and then you see the word conservation being repeated like this a couple of times, you know that this is about conservation, right? So read the questions and then think about and connect those dots. And this is something I'm going to tell you guys like over and over again when we actually go over questions. And then I guess we could also add a little bit more to understanding of the passage, right? Here, I want you to focus on 32, 36. Why? And then even 33. And this, I guess, like I gotta work on it in the manuscript to sort of focus on this one. But why do you have to emphasize this, this? I'm kind of showing you. It's in quotation mark. Obviously, right? I mean, we know. But how does that is your brain sort of processing that? It's just a quotation mark. No. These are the phrase or words that they think is very important. Utilize that. All right? So eventually they're going to say something about descendants, right? They're going to say something about duty. And what do you think they had the word duty there? Duty to what? Protect the country by fighting the enemy? No. It's a duty about what? Conservation. All right? And then even this word average is something that I'm going to point out to you later. Even though that's not the point in this process, right? So let's take a look at question 29. Again, if you read through the answer choices, right? C was the answer. Why? Because we have the word prosperous future. That relates to descendants. Right? And again, you could also consider future generation as well. But we're kind of sort of like recognizing that, again, C is the answer. So what I'm basically saying is that, this is what they're saying, basically. Needed relates to duty, right? And descendant relates to bright future. Things like that. So if you're considering A and C, maybe C is better because of the word duty. So I want you to actively incorporate this information that was given actually for free. It didn't really require any effort for you guys to seek out descendant is important or duty is important. They say to you. So take advantage of that. All right. Now, again, I kind of sort of like went ahead and say something about what should be eliminated and all that. Again, previously I was giving out this list of saying, okay, think about all this. But I have a little description why they do that. And again, basically it's about how, I guess, like they want you to choose the wrong choice, right? To sound like a plausible, but sometimes when you are not really sure about the answer, right? You want to have something that sounds very, sure or clear. So in order to eliminate your like ambivalence, in order to I guess like choose an answer that sounds very confident, quote unquote, then you tend to choose something that is like really extreme. I mean, I guess in a way using psychology that way. So when you're not sure, you tend to choose something that is very confident. And then I guess sometimes using these words will make it something that is like, in a way, sure of itself, but that actually is wrong most of the times, right? So again, when you have like four questions like this, I don't know what B is saying, C is saying, D is saying, but after reading and then you recognize only and not really sure whether B, C, or D is the right answer, you could eliminate the assumed sounding choice. All right. And then again, negative sounding. Again, this is very important, especially when you're left with a couple of choices. Ask yourself again, back, we are doing the previous question. Was it 30? Yeah, this one, B or D. I'll steal from D because of danger of failing to conserve and all that, right? So again, you gotta watch out for something like that, future generation. And I guess actually 32, this is it, right? So what descendants say? So I guess like I don't wanna choose A or B because of the word uncertainty and then complexity. And this is what like they're saying, like I guess like I translate the word uncertainty as an ambivalence or complexity as a difficult. So I don't know how many of you actually chose A or B or not, I guess like if you did, you're not really following it. If you listening to this for first time, hearing this first time, that's fine. But those of you who already been listening to this for a while, don't. Stop doing that, right? That's why you're here listening to like same thing basically. A and B are out. So 32, A and B out, and then I guess you gotta choose between C and D, right? So that's the basically what you have to do. And then I guess we have qualities that makes an answer choice generally correct. Look for a choice that repeats the same theme similar to the main idea. So again, we have a choice, 29. Author's main assertion in the passage is that, and guess what? C was the answer, right? Conservation is needed to assure a bright future. So since we already have the real stuff, let's take a look at the real stuff. Question 37. All right, based on the passage, the author will most likely agree with which of the following statements. So basically, 37 is repeating of what the passage is saying. Right? Which choice do you think you could eliminate based on what we just discussed? Now I want you guys to answer. 37. There are couple of things that you need to consider. This is about what? Learning to eliminate a choice because it sounds negative or extreme, or opt for a choice that will what? Closely relate to main idea, and that's what we just discussed now, right? So give me a choice that I want you guys to eliminate. Helen, could you eliminate a choice for me for 37?
A
Yes, why?
only.
Awesome. Because of this only sparingly, I don't want it. So I eliminate A. All right. Now, what was this about? It was about conservation, right? Why do we need conservation? Conservation is needed for assure of bright future. All right. So which do you think you should also eliminate? Because it doesn't really about conservation or the future. I guess C, because C is not about economy or anything like that. So I'll eliminate this. So what boils down to is B and D. So again, if you're like, let's say, wanting to get 600 from 500 or below, I am very comfortable if you just end up choosing D. D is not the right answer. Well, why would I be comfortable choosing D? Conservation. So when you're like don't know the answer and then you're gonna you're gonna start thinking about that. What is this about? Conservation. So sometimes you're gonna get it wrong, get into trouble. But it's better to get it wrong that way than, oh, I think C is the answer. I don't know. It's somehow I'm drawn to C. No, that should not be the reason. Conservation should be the reason. Unfortunately, that's not the right answer. But again, for now, this is a difficult question. So this is about what? The future, right? Bright future. So when you have B, future generation have a right to enjoy the same advantages. What advantages are they talking about? Like, taking advantage of the natural resources provided by forests. So again, if you're at that point, right, younger students are at that point, it's just fine. But I want you to focus on D. But D is about voluntary action, then like government regulation, maybe sounds okay, but I don't think that would be the answer. You know what I mean? So that would be it. So 37, the answer should be B. Okay? Again, let's go. That's what I mean by like, okay, if you have a question, then you need to always try to relate to the main idea or point of view. I mean, that's what it was. And this is what I was like going to say in the book, but I don't want to just like read it off from the script here. All right, and then again, this is really obvious, but and it also kind of applies to experience, in reading stuff, having like background information, stuff like that. So since I major in history and I've been doing this for a while, and then I am very interested in American history a lot, right? So I do have more, I guess, like knowledge on American history than you guys would. So I'll use that knowledge to get the answer. But those knowledge is not something that is like it requires so much reading that is very beyond your ability. No, you already know some of the stuff, and some of the stuff I will tell you. But what I'm saying is that if the choice correlates to what you already know and makes sense to you, because the essay passage will not say something that is stupid or contrary to logic or common sense, what you think is right might be the right choice. Grant that that might be subjective too, right? Because as I get older, not many people feel the same way that I would about things. Even my own family, right? And even littlest things. I grew up in a family where I guess we would eat a lot because we never get hungry. So I eat I didn't realize that was like different from others. So when we family get together, we eat a lot. You know what I mean? So I used to be heavier than right now. Some of you would know. But that's how it was. But I was getting older and older, so I guess I had to control my eating. And then slowly, I used to sort of like feeding my kids and got upset when they couldn't finish their portion. And it was when they were like growing and all that. So I guess like I literally force fed them. But I guess their height wasn't, it was increasing a lot. So I guess sometimes I just let them eat what they need to eat, and then I realized, I'm very different from them, even in terms of eating. I'm eating. So there's a sense of fullness, and my sense of fullness is maybe different. So I'm not talking about that subjective matter, what you think is right or wrong, right? I'm talking about objective sense, what you learn from school. You know what I mean? Like racism is bad kind of thing. Or like woman should have an equal right kind of thing. I'm talking about that kind of sense. Now, oh, I like this choice, sensible choice. You know what I mean? So again, do be very careful about choosing something that makes most sense, but sometimes that is what you need to do. 31. Basically, kind of going over questions that you already did. Author characterized environmental conservation primarily as, right? You have responsible form of civic engagement, practical means of increasing economic productivity. So basically, A talks about it's just, we should do it because like we need to be, good citizens. That's what civic engagement means. Practical means of increasing economic productivity, meaning like, we need to grow our economy by conserving. C, belated attempt to address an ongoing crisis. Belated means like late. So I guess like a later attempt to address, deal with something that's going on, like something that continues to be a problem. That's what ongoing crisis mean. And then D, controversial approach to a sensitive issue, right? And again, a student like Daniel might be, feeling D might be the answer because I've been saying to class, right, those of you, that if you see the word approach, and there will be certain words that you need to feel very special to, right? Whenever you see it, you got to feel that that's very close to a right answer because more often than not, I, sort of notice the word approach being used as a part of a correct choice and wrong choice a lot more. So I guess like if anything comes, I guess like I like this. But you could also have to sort of like consider D is not the right answer because controversial means what? Something that people debate, not agree on. It's negative. So sometimes what I would tell you will crash like this. You have something negative and something that you need to look out for. But in the negative triumphs over like word like approach here, right? So D wouldn't work. Again, we are recycling stuff, and then sometimes I feel really guilty, like, using a lot of water because, like, water is precious, even though we don't sort of like use water like that because it's very finite resource. You know what I mean? So we do sometimes feel guilty about, not protecting the environment, and that's what basically A is saying. Responsible form of civic engagement. That we need to sort of like, be a good citizen. That's what A basically is saying. Some of you might not have, I guess, like, I guess the sense here, but I guess you could also say conscientious effort of civic duty. Well, I kind of translate that, but yeah, civic duty, civic engagement, things like that. Something that is, you gotta do because you're a good citizen. That is what I mean by like making sense, choosing a choice that would make sense. All right. So these are generally the stuff that you got to consider, like relate to main idea, like have positive meaning. I guess I didn't quite go over positive meaning. Okay, skip that thing. But it's obvious. If you want to eliminate stuff that is negative, then you look for something positive, right? And then making the most sense. That's what we just did. And then now this is very important. Getting challenging question right. So again, I realize like students who are joining us in the summer, they're, may not be experienced in the SAT, but, I hear you guys are good students at school. So I guess like, I would rather focus more on this and think about this, because once you realize this and then choose the other one based on what I've been telling you, after you manage to eliminate a couple of choices, you're going to do really well. Otherwise, I guess like, you guys will just progress according to your ability rather than, tips I've been giving you or will be giving you. Look for the opposite sounding choices. Again, I get really upset. I usually sort of like look at students' answer choices on Sundays, right? Because I have class on Monday. And then literally look at the choices and how you guys thought process went on Saturday when you guys are taking the test. And then I really get upset when the wrong choice happened to be, and it doesn't have anything to do with opposite relationships. And again, opposite relationship is like this. Here, basically, B, people are more likely to develop diabetes when using statins. Statins are often prescribed for the treatment of diabetes. So I guess that B talks about causing diabetes, statin called diabetes, and C talks about treating. And D talks about people are less likely to develop diabetes when using statin. So B and D are opposite, and B or C is opposite. And when you have two choices that are opposite of one, that is the right answer. And again, sometimes this happens. But when I have students getting number, this 14 wrong, I get upset. I mean, I get upset, like get furious if like they choose something like A. Because they're not really seeing B or C or a B or D relationship. And there are a bunch like that. Here, number 6. The price of scrap metal has increased more than late 1990s than ever before. So I guess like if you have a scrap metal, it's increasing, I guess you want to deal with that scrap metal, right? Where C talks about it is usually not profitable to recycle scrap metal in America. Why is it not profitable? Because it doesn't really worth much. So A and C are opposite. And I get upset when like people choose something like B or D. So look for the opposite is very important. And again, I guess opposite means like looking at words like this. Inside is opposite of boundary, like edge. So sometimes you need to understand the entire context or like the meaning of the choice, but sometimes you could recognize opposite choice by recognizing opposite sounding words in between two choices. Because obviously, if you have like something two opposite to one, obviously A is the answer. All right, this is very important. And again, this list will move increase as I talk to you about. I mean, I will as we go over the questions and tests in the future. Example, perceive. And then those of you who don't know the word idiosyncratic, it means creative, doing something new, innovative, right? So words like this, especially example. And again, last Monday I pointed out to you guys like that, some of you didn't recognize our example in answer choice, right? Perceive. Perceive is to see, to understand, right? And again, there will be words like grasp, comprehend, right? But start with the word perceive. So if nothing else, you have to sort of like look at 32, right? So let's just look at 32. Of the question in line 27 to 42, what descendants mainly serves to, right? So if you're like sort of like looking at this, and again, we already know the answer, right? No, actually 32, no. So we could do this. We could eliminate A because of the word uncertainty. We could eliminate B because of the word complexity, right? And then we're given the choice between C and D, right? C and D. Bailey, what should be the answer for 32? I'm calling you because you haven't had a chance to like look at this before, I believe. So I'm telling you, if you have to choose between C and D, what should be the answer?
C.
Yes. Okay, and this is another point. If you're not really sure, so let's say for whatever reason, like, you ate something, bad or whatever. So you have your stomach ache and or something is bothering you. Your mother says something, your brother says something, right? Or sister says something. They kind of nag you. So when you're actually taking the real test or the practice test, something just went off and then like you're not really concentrating. And you have a bunch of questions left over. A couple of questions or, even 10 questions. It's time to guess. If you're time to guess, you need to guess consistently. So you have like 5 questions that you can't really answer. We have no idea. And you have not eliminated C. I would strongly suggest C. Why? Because just be consistent. C. So when I say, okay, this is a really difficult question, I will point out, you got to guess C. And sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong. Because it could be B or A. It could be any choice that you decide to make. But that letter has to be consistent to a point where, oh, I know this student is choosing B whenever he or she is guessing. How do I know that? If I see more B's than whatever choices. How do I know that? When I see, difficult question, and I know like you can't really get the answer, and then I see B from the students that who guess it wrong, but be consistent with that choice. Even those who are here who've been taking the class, I know you guys sometimes like end up choosing AB or AC, a pattern, rather than consistently choosing C. So have a system so that you could just do that consistency, right? So when you're dealing with B and C, yeah. Or you could say C because you have word like approach. And again, I'm adding another word, advocate. Advocate is to support, champion. So it could be also used as a noun, as a supporter, right? Or champion. And champion could be a word that you need to also like be keen to because it means someone who supports stuff, a supporter, rather than being a champion or something, right? So anyhow, so that's what I mean by like looking for words that will be. But is that going to be always the case? No, because there was a choice that I guess like 31 that we say didn't, even though it had the word approach here because of the word controversial. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But when you're dealing with, let's say, 31, I guess that was the other question. So I guess, well, which question was this? 31. All right. Like when you're dealing with A, responsible form of civic engagement, and then D, controversial approach to a sensitive issue, right? A is the answer. C is the answer. You could get those answers, and then again, some of you might have gotten both answers correctly, just reading, but I want you to see that connection, and also this, and this is very important. And again, that's why some of you are here today. I just don't want you guys to get question something like 31 wrong by choosing something like B. And then 32 wrong by choosing something like B or D. If you cannot recognize responsible form of civic engagement is like in accord with what we could say as making sense or sensible choice, your choice should have been D because of the word approach. If you chose D for that question, 31, D, because of the approach, you might have not recognized the word controversial there, but still went on, weren't even sure about getting the answer, choosing that as the answer because of the word controversial, but go ahead and do it. Because that will actually give you a very good chance of getting the answer for 32 because of the word approach. That's what I mean by being consistent. When you're like realizing what you're looking for, right? So that's what you need to do. Sooner the better. All right. Actually, there's another key word, underscore, that is to emphasize something that you need to, I guess, like be into. So whenever we have like words that I want you to emphasize, I also I want you to remember. Again, you know, this is for the future, but you're going to sort of like have choices that will have a word highlighted in yellow. Should be somewhere around here. I think it's toward the end. Yeah, like example, right? 32 example. Support is a good idea too, good word too, right? And was it other one? Yeah, 33. Again, we have support here. So there will be an actual test that you have the same word repeating the same, like 2 consecutive questions, answer choices, and answer choices are 2 consecutive questions that will have the same word. Don't be suspicious. Just choose if you recognize that. Not choose like, okay, I will choose once and not the other, because you might end up getting both questions wrong, even if like they are like answer to one of them at least. All right, so there's like something that you have to look out for, like choosing words. And then again, this one again is very subjective, but if you're not really sure, look for a choice that will have a SAT level word. And this is like you know, something that will, you know, come up from time to time, because they will intentionally use a very fancy word out of the blue, right? So again, propagating, propulsive, right? Are kind of words that I guess you don't really see too often, even on the SAT answer choices. So if you see that, be the answer. Meaning, if you have something that you're not really confident what it means, that is intentional. SAT or ACT are preventing you from getting the right answer because they're giving you something that that you're not sure about. So you got to use that reverse psychology. And then I guess lastly, look for choice that can easily be comprehend, meaning something that you can understand. So when you look at the answer choice, like there's something that I guess like you feel kind of, what does this mean? What is that, right? And hopefully that's what 31 is about. I guess this wasn't the right question. Why did I put down 31 there? I guess anyhow. Actually, it wasn't 31, it was average. Which one had average? Oh, that was like another test, was it? I'm just like saying to myself. Anyhow, yeah. I guess like we're kind of sort of running out of time. I guess I want to take a break before you get all tired and not drift off. Basically, if you read through the answer choices, A, the effort required to achieve desired change will not be extraordinary. Every era initially experienced controversial reforms, and then new strategy will quickly become accepted practice. And then the supported program should be explained for the general public. Again, this is a rather difficult question, right? Daniel, don't be afraid. You're probably going to say a wrong choice. But in your case, what should be something that stand out for you for 31? I'm calling you because like you kind of are doing fairly well on following the stuff that I've been telling you about.
See.
Yeah. So again, Daniel is in middle school, so I don't expect him to get this tough question, but I want him to be consistent with his choice, right? Because of the word practice. Again, that kind of follows up on like what I told you. Like, practice is a word that means custom way of doing things, not like training kind of thing or exercise, right? In the SAT context. So C would not be something that I guess like would be something that I want students like Daniel, younger students, to take, right? And if you don't know, hell, I guess C might be a good choice, right? What I was like looking at is that a lot of people might not know what this actually means. Changes that will not be extraordinary. I mean, you will not use the word extraordinary with not extraordinary kind of thing, right? So you might be like skimming over what is this thing saying? It kind of sounds silly, right? And again, this is somewhat subjective. And maybe I should come up with a better example than what I'm giving you right now. But this phrase hopefully will be something that I guess you feel kind of like, what is this kind of thing, right? And this is what I also want to say. Aside from what the question is saying, so this is typically what you need to see, right? There are a bunch of words when you're reading question 31. But as soon as you see word in quotation mark, and that's from the passage, this word is the key to getting the right answer. So you need to train that. When? Not when you're actually taking your test, because your brain is clicking, thinking something else, trying to look for the right answer. So you need to take a step back after you take the test and have your own test and time for review. Go through every single questions in the test you went through during the summer in the future, and then actively look out for negative sounding choices, opposite choices, or I guess like a question that has a quotation mark, and focus on that word and what that actually means. That's when you realize that, and then your brain will be trained to recognize it. And basically, it should have been like this. Will not be extraordinary translates to average. A is the answer. And this is the way Joel, Timothy, Lena, I guess like, Caitlin, Scott, right? Those of you going to take the test like this fall, hopefully for like to apply, right? Need to start approaching. And that's how you need to sort of like will do well on the test. Okay. So I guess like we went on for like hour and 30 minutes talking about this stuff. So it's long enough. And then I think this is basically what you need to have, right? So we're going to take about 10-minute break. All right. So again, this file is already uploaded, so you could download it, later if you haven't done that already. And again, this is a very truncated, shortened version of a passage of an actual SAT passage. The test itself was given out like in the mid 1990s, right? So a really long time ago, but the concept applies. Just the same. So even though it's more than like 25 years, SAT hasn't changed much in that way. All right. So what do we need to do? We need to read the blurb, the first sentence, right? And questions. And then start answering the question. Or I guess you could do that just as like by reading the first sentence. But anyhow, the passage is from a book written by a Chinese American woman about a Chinese American woman writer. So again, just look, oh, this is about Chinese American woman. This is about Chinese American writers. Because I guess like, we all kind of share similar, I guess, like experience in a way. Some are Chinese American, some are Korean American, you know what I mean? We have like a mixed heritage here, right? And this is about, what does it mean to be Chinese American? What does it mean to be Korean American? And I bet most of what they're going to ask you about, you guys already experience. So that's what I meant by like, don't be afraid to use your common sense or your knowledge that you already have, right? And again, growing up, I guess like here, I came to the country. My family immigrated when I was like 11, and then never went back to Korea until I was like 21. So I guess I spent 10 years here, and then grew up in New York actually, and then went back. And then things were vastly different. You know what I mean? Nowadays, like if like people go back to Korea, Koreans tend to be more fashionable. They have they kind of follow fashion more closely than I guess like us, most of us here. So they're way better dressed and stuff like that. But when I first went back, again, I behave differently. So I guess they kind of consider me as a Korean, but not real Korean. And I went back to work and lived there for like 7 years or so. Again, I still had that feeling. I'm sure some of you go back to Korea or China will have the same kind of feeling. You know what I mean? So so some of it you already know. But what is this about? Well, it's about Chinese American. Now let's read the first sentence. Question of one's identity is at the same time a simple and very complex issue. So this is about identity. Identity as a Chinese or American, or as a Chinese American. You get my idea? Get the drift? Now, I guess we get to says, all right, they're going to talk about someone named Imai Z and then Diana Chang. I guess, they're mentioned because maybe relating to this identity, right? And then number 4 talks about what does the author consider the best example of external or social factors mentioned. So I guess like external social factors is fairly important. Wait a minute, they literally asking you in the same line 36, and ask you about the word impinge. So I guess that must be really important part of the passage, because since like they're both questions in the same line, right? So what you need to do, focus more on that those line or that sentence than others. So let's go back. So let's read this here. To complicate further the question of identity, not only are parentage and geographical factors significant, but external or social factors impinge as well. And guess what? You should recognize the word identity. Identity. Right? So I guess like you see the word identity that you saw in the first sentence repeating here. And then number 6, author's views of our Chinese American identity can best be summarized as which of the following? Hey, what is this? Identity. Right? And then number 7, the quotation from Joy Luck Club emphasized the point that Chinese American, that American-born Chinese Americans, blah blah blah. So I guess, okay. So you know, this doesn't really give you a whole lot. So we have 3 questions that kind of mention like individuals or even the title of a book. I guess it must be about what? Identity. That's what you need to assume. So number 1, the passage serves primarily to, well, what it should be about. Well, I guess we cannot eliminate choices based on Chinese American because every single choice talks about Chinese American. But what's the word that we need to be, you know, keen to or look out for? Identity. So I see it in A. Do I see it in B? Encouraging Chinese American writers to write more about the variety of cultural experience they had? No, it doesn't know about identity. How about C? Inform Chinese American writers to write more fully about variety of cultural experience they had. Is that about identity? Nope. D. Praise the talent and the resourcefulness of contemporary Chinese American woman writers. Sorry, it's not about identity. So after reading B, you eliminate, right? After reading C, you eliminate. And you could also eliminate D. So what do you have left? A. So my point is that you don't necessarily have to know that A is the right answer, but you start eliminating because other choice doesn't talk about identity and you have only one choice, A. That's how your thought process needs to go through. Grant that some good, like students who already, you know, have the skill to recognize A as the answer, it's hard to utilize that. So I'm not saying that you got to do that every single time, but whenever you get stuck in a question, that you're debating between 2 choices, that's when you got to refer back to blur, first sentence, or other questions that might have mentioned a word that you should recognize in one of those choice that you're debating between. So A is the answer. All right. And then again, so this person was mentioned to illustrate what? Identity. I like A. And especially A says difficulty of determining one's identity. So I guess it's about conflicting sense of identity. This literally says the same thing. If you kind of know what A in 1A and 2A is saying about. But does B say anything about identity? No. How about C? Well, I guess I kind of like C because it says influence of social rank on the perception of ethnic identity. And then D, advantage of wide experience on an author's creativity. No, it doesn't talk about identity. Now, if you cannot sort of recognize A, and number 1A is saying the same thing, it's just fine to choose C. You might not get it, because C is not the right answer. But what I'm saying is that given your ability, if you cannot recognize that A is closely aligned to what you just chose, the answer for number 1, C is just a fine choice, even though you're not gonna get it. So those of you who are sort of trying to improve by getting beyond 500 to 600 and all that, don't think about getting it wrong. Think about why you're choosing C. Identity would be it. What's another reason that C might have been considered? Daniel, can you tell me why I'm fine with you choosing C maybe?
Maybe perception.
Yeah, the word perception. Because perception is like point of view, which I guess like the SAT passage will mention, choices will mention a lot, and that happens to be choices that mention the word perception happen to be correct choice more often, lot more often than not. And frankly, I told you, if you're can't really say A, and because of the word difficulty in this context, oh, that must be opposite. I mean, that must be something that I need to eliminate because I don't want something that is like a negative. That's fine too, because you're gonna get this wrong either way. Either you get it wrong because you don't have the skills to understand whatever they're saying, so you end up choosing something else. You're gonna get it wrong because, like, what I say about staying away from difficult staying away from negative sounding choice. Well, A happens to be negative sounding. I'm fine with that too. I'm fine that you choose C because I'm fine with you eliminating A. I'm fine with you choosing C because of the word perception, or even you have no idea, so you're gonna just end up choosing C. What I'm saying is that you do it according to my reasoning. And sometimes, again, I'm telling you, my reasoning is not like linear. It go back and forth. You know what I mean? It sometimes apply one principle, but the other doesn't work. But it's up to you to get used to that. But be consistent. So either A or C. But again, it will take time for you to recognize A. At this point, it's not, then you need to sort of like improve by reading all that. But I just don't want you to get 3 wrong, because there's only one option. Why? Because of the word identity. Other choice don't talk about identity. This is the answer. So Diana Chang's life was there because she's unwilling to identify solely with any one cultural background. So she's not just Chinese. She's not just American. She's Chinese American with dual heritage. All right. And again, what does author consider best example of external or social factors mentioned in line 36? Obviously not A, because it doesn't talk about identity. Not B, not D, because it doesn't talk about identity. So I guess that we're quandary and have to go back. If we have a problem, if D doesn't talk about identity, that means like this question is not about I guess like the word identity. So I guess you got to figure things out. But fortunately, it does talk about identity. These are right answer. And then impinge, I guess it relates to the word factors. So factors here, factors impinge as well. So factors actually contribute. So this one you got another word too. B is the answer. Now you should be, in a way, suspicious, right? Suspicious. If any of the choice actually mention the word identity, because you already have the word identity here, right? So, and thankfully we don't have here. All right, we're running out of time. So Helen, what's the answer for 6? You gotta guess. Don't read. Give me the answer right now. Helen, what's the answer for number 6?
C.
Yes. The reason why I'm saying, I mean, you might have remember what we did, but you should be C, because like if you need to guess, just C and move on. But you have a couple of seconds to sort of look at C. You should feel very comfortable. Now, tell me, any of you, why you should feel comfortable choosing C. Anytime you see one of these words, you gotta feel comfortable choosing. What do you see in C?
Perceive.
Yeah. Perceive. So whole point today was to not 100%, but get closer to like 75%. Whenever you choose an answer, you have higher chance than not by following the direction I've been giving you or tips I've been giving you. Right? So you gotta sort of, again, I'm making a point when like everything falls in line in terms of what I'm talking about, right? That's why I have this example. It's not going to be like this like every single time, right? But yeah, I guess like you go through this. Let's say you have 2 seconds to choose. So you go through, your brain need to scan, your eyes need to scan, and then see the word perceive like this and choose C. And you don't have even a second to choose because you have like 5 questions and you have 10, less than 2 seconds or whatever. Choose C and move on. So you either get it because you have the skill or not. You just have to, sort of look for those kind of things. So perception, even though number 2 kite didn't work, well, 6 it did. And then quotations, line 55, 59, the Joy Luck Club emphasize the point that American-born Chinese Americans. Okay, so what does it need to be about? Again, barely. We don't have time. What should be the answer? Barely?
C.
Yes. Now, C, why? Because alienated in their ancestors' homeland of China means like you feel like a foreigner. Why? Because they view you as not as Chinese with same skin tone, skin color, but as someone who acts like an American. Whereas like when this person come back, she would view as a Chinese because that person doesn't look like a typical American person. That's something that I guess like you guys might experience or already experience, right? And again, this happens even now. I guess like there's a guy named Andrew Yang. I guess like he ran for president, guaranteeing universal income, like government providing basic income so that everyone could sort of like live without thinking about money or getting a job, right? And now he's like running for, I guess, like a mayor of New York City, right? And then I guess like there's a cartoon portraying him as a tourist, right? And then there's a big controversy going on there because I guess like this cartoonist assumed that since he's a Chinese American per se, that he is just a visitor. That's the idea. I guess they stem from like his response to a question, what is his favorite subway stop in New York City, right? And then he said Times Square. Because like Times Square is the most famous, like I guess, subway station in New York City. There must be about like 6 or 8 lines, subway lines, right? That actually stop at Times Square. So I guess like Times Square is like something that I guess any tourist will know. So in that regard, I guess like people kind of assume that I guess he doesn't know about New York City. Well, he went to law school in New York City, Columbia Law School. So he'd been living, I guess, on and off since like he went to school there when he was in his 20s. He must be into his 40s now, right? So I guess like he's been living there for like more than 20 years. I guess like he got stuck with like a question. Maybe he just thought of a subway station that he first thought of. Or maybe he might have thought of like 116th Street, which is a subway stop for, I guess, a Columbia University. If he said that and then, you know, why? And then he might have said like going to school there. I guess he could have been portrayed as a snob, you know, going to Ivy League school. So whichever reason why he said Times Square for a cartoonist to portray him as a tourist is kind of insulting to Asians. Maybe as a white guy who's like drawing that picture, I guess doesn't really feel that. But as soon as you realize as an Asian, you know, being asked, I mean, because all of you, most of you are born here, right? To be asked that, you know, when did your family came, or when did you come to America? You feel offended in a way, even though that might necessarily be like racist thing to say from a non-Asian person. But how you perceive and how you feel that is something that, you know, take that is something that could be considered to be racist. Again, this type of SAT passage will be something that you'll be reading about. So that's what I mean by this. That C should be it because that's how you might have experienced. Grant that your experience may not translate to universal experience. So I guess like non-Asian person or non-minority person would not automatically understand this passage, but that's the entire point. That the SAT passage is there to sort of quote unquote educate the reader, the students, to discuss something that they never experienced or might have not experienced. Most of them anyhow. But don't be afraid to use that, you know, knowledge or background information if you have one. So yeah, I mean, I just went through like real SAT passage without really driving into what they're going to say. Just by the blur, first sentence, maybe a sentence there. All right. Let's go back to, I guess, the PSAT passage that you guys had to work on in the beginning. Again, this is about 5-4 conservation. And again, this more or less has to do with what you'll be expecting during the summer, right? And again, when you're here in person, I'll be showing this to you like with the TV I have here, right? But 5-4 conservation, something that we just did. And again, don't be afraid to relate to question 37B, future generation to enjoy same advantages. So you still got conservation and prosperous future, something that you could relate to. All right, and then number 30, again, conservation is necessary. This is what we just said. And then that's why number 30, B is the answer. acknowledgement of benefits America has enjoyed by depleting natural resources to a call to use their resource more wisely. So I guess like depleting means like used up. So I guess we should not we should stop using or wasting resource, but save. Even though it was mentioned when again author the College Board is making a point 1910. So there's some people back in 1910, more than 110 years ago, saying the same thing that most people are saying now, right? I guess it's kind of tilt, right? But there's certain people who denies like things are changing on the planet, right? That we should stop like using gasoline, oil, or coal too much. And yet, I guess that some people would say, you know, that's fine. But I guess it wasn't fine for some of them back in the days. And that's what this passage is about, right? Okay, and then again, number 31, you could read some of the lines, but could relate to question 32. And then kind of mentioned to you like approach is a good thing, not in this context, but 32 it is, because it needs to be about civic engagement, and this is what they're talking about. Underscore the necessity of approach the author advocates. And then again, 33, average translates to not be ordinary. So whenever you have a word or phrase in quotation mark, look for a choice that will directly address that quotation mark or something stated in the quotation mark. All right, and again, number 34, this is all about conservation. So think about it. Only D talks about conservation. Conserving what? Natural resources. So D is the answer. All right. And then I guess like 35 is where you have to read the line, but something that I'm going to point out to you a bit later. I mean, like in the late test, there are a few things that you need to do to get this right or have a chance to get it right more often than not. And then 36, responsible form of civic engagement, right? Is something that we already have in A, and then vastly higher duty. You get my drift? You have the word responsible, it's 31A. And you have duty in line 58, responsibility is the answer. The reason why they have tax is that when you like bring in stuff from abroad, you pay duty, a form of tax. All right. And again, 37, this is something that you had to read a little bit. I guess only is something that that you don't want to choose, right? I guess I will tend to look at conservation here. Oops. Conservation here. So if I were to sort of like read the lines, I would have read line 57 to 58 because like it's about conservation. Unfortunately, in this context, it didn't work. But that's something that I guess like some of you might have noticed. But here it was, I guess, between B and D because of the word conservation. So 37 was more or less a difficult choice. Something that we kind of a difficult question. And it was kind of difficult to recognize B as the answer, but it was based on whatever we did before, right? So that was it. So 37B, 38D, because you have to read lines 68 to 69. Anyhow, that was like sort of finishing off what we just started in the beginning. And now I'm gonna go over a few questions with you that I guess like was like Lena and then I guess Jonathan did last week, right, toward the end. But it's just a few questions that I want you guys to sort of look at. And again, don't worry about it if you haven't had a chance to do this. All right. Okay, so Jonathan got number 30 wrong. I'm sorry, 26 wrong. This is the only question that Jonathan got wrong. All right, so good job, Jonathan. Or I will say, take advantage of what we just went through here. All right, and whenever in doubt, you need to, I guess, like think about the main idea. And this one doesn't have a blurb, but the main idea basically will be stating in the first sentence. And the first sentence says, in a world of birds, Bill design is prime example of evolution fine-tuning. So they're going to talk about Bill design, Bill being the most important word. And then B was the answer. Efficiency of the bill of the closed bill, all right? Based on the first sentence. So that's what I would sort of say to you guys, like, if you're doing it, right? And then we probably know, like, I guess this is about closed bill because 22, B was the answer, closed bill. So I'm telling you, I guess, like, and this is about bill, right? Bill design. Then Jonathan and others, and then others who haven't had a chance to, I guess, look at this, or even if you did it, it was like a while back, right? What will be the answer based on, not based on like what you had to go back and read line 18, but based on what we just found out that it's about closed bill? Because like you do see the word closed bill a lot. Closed bill here, closed bill here. All right.
Species.
Which one?
Species.
No, that's the thing. Do you see the word species in first sentence?
No.
Right? Do you see it here? No, right?
Nope.
Do you see anywhere except in the line that you had to read? Right? So bills of different closed-bill species and subspecies vary. Some are stout and deep, others more slender and shallow, right? So basically, the some and others are describing stout. That means like short. Slender means skinny. Deep and shallow. They're actually describing the shape of bill. You understand? What I'm basically saying is that, yeah, I mean, don't fall for like the reading, the passage, because look, again, you're a good reader, Jonathan, by choosing B, because look, everything else you got it right, right? But you could have gotten a perfect score on this test. When? If you thought about, okay, I'm kind of attracted to maybe species, but why am I seeing the word bills? And bill should be something that I should consider, because I see in the first sentence and almost every single like question is about closed bill. So you got to have that in mind. A is the answer, bill. I guess I could just close this. So you had to sort of like say, I mean, there's other ways to do it, but others, it has to be bills because that's what they've been talking about. All right. Okay. Let's take a look at other questions here. The very first one. Yeah, that's not necessary. Let me see. Yeah, I guess I'll just go over. Let me see. Maybe not 45. Hmm. Okay, so I think I'm going to go over a question that Lena got wrong. One of them was like 46. Okay, which of the following characteristics of radio galaxies mentioned in the passage, right? So again, we have like a bunch of stuff here. And then 46, I guess like then I chose C. Okay, so I guess at least I kind of understand that, right? But here 46, you got to eliminate B. Why? Can anyone tell me if, like, again, it's not based on like what you've read in the passage, but B should be something that you got to stay away from. Why is that? Oh, this is longer version. Questions that are generally incorrect. This principle applies to this one. Too small to be seen. So what I'm basically saying is this is about like not reading the passage or anything like that. It's just that you gotta be training your eyes to look out for something that it may not be the answer. And again, that could be the answer, like in rare occasion. I'm not saying that you want to sort of like eliminate it, but what especially those of you having a chance to read the passage and looking for the answer, and that could just as well happen to you guys, right? Then you got to start look out for word stuff that you could eliminate because of too small. Maybe I will eliminate D as well. Why? Not as bright. The reason why I kind of expect students to choose either A or C is this: irregular here, elliptical here. They talk about elliptical galaxies right here, and then irregular here. And they're asking you characteristics of radio galaxy, right? So you have a choice. I mean, according to how I want you to choose the answer. By using other questions, it could be either elliptical or irregular based on the question before and after, right? And now I'm gonna give you answer for 47. Then I chose A, and indeed that's the right answer, A. So what percentage of galaxies are irregular? They're like 10%, right? And then Lena also got 45 right. No, actually 45 wrong. So I guess that's why there was a little bit of a problem. Well, 45, I guess like they contain, okay, C is the right answer because that's not what was mentioned here. Contain high amount of interstellar gas. They're actually their largest galaxies. So you have one that it says like it's the largest galaxy. One is about 10%, right? So I guess you gotta figure, and again, this what has to be because like you gotta. So would the passage talk more about something that makes up most of the galaxies or largest galaxies, or something that is relatively small, like 10%? And you gotta place your bet that way. What I'm basically saying is that anytime you're not sure about the answer, use questions before, after, or even the question like, couple of questions after, or something that you end up reading later. And don't be afraid to do this too. 48 and 49. Okay. So again, I think Lena might have like got into trouble with time management and she ran out of time. But this is how you need to do it. If you're running out of time, you got to choose C. And again, I'm not intentionally doing that. What I'm saying is that it happens that like sometimes that could happen because I don't think she got this wrong because like she didn't know what she was doing. Basically, she got this wrong because she didn't have time to read thoroughly, right? But guess what? And this is what I want everyone you to see, including Jonathan, who only got one wrong. You gotta realize, okay, they're talking about distance. Guess what? C talks about what? Distance. So if you sort of watch out for words that kind of repeats this way, you're making the connection. If you see that connection, you're probably going to get both of the questions right. And believe it or not, 48 and 49, they're gotta basically read the same lines. That's why 40. That's the right answer, right? Okay, and I'm gonna show you this too. 41, they ask you about the word which in line 7, but believe it or not, 48 is exactly where you had to read. So when they give you a vocabulary and context question, it kind of plays out differently in the SAT or ACT. But they will ask you a word from a sentence that is totally relevant or very important in understanding the general flow of the passage. Right? The whole point of like asking you a word is not just this random thing. They want you to understand the core part of the passage, and that word is a core part of that sentence. So take particular attention to whatever sentence that you require to read by for free, meaning they give you a line, they give you like, what this mean, or give you something to read. Pay attention to it, not only for 41, or following question. Like this. Because like whatever you had to read for 42 was there in line 7. And again, 39, you have the word major. That major repeats in major in B. And believe it or not, this isn't like some practice test created by like a publisher. This is what I had to deal with when I was like first starting out teaching, like teaching TOEFL test. There's a test that it's like you got a test that you need to take in order to study here as a foreign student, right? And why I'm using this test? Because this test is created by ETS, Educational Testing Service, which is a parent company of College Board. Again, College Board is a company that creates the SAT. So they basically are the same company, having same philosophy. Major, major. Again, don't be afraid to connect this dot. 32, you read the first sentence, you get it, but it doesn't matter. I'm talking about accomplishment. And then 37, it talks about accomplishment of a publisher. And this publisher translates to businesswoman, but it could also, why she's there? Because she's a publisher. So obviously, if she's a publisher, she'll publish stuff. Harold is the answer, but they're talking about decoration. And what does decoration mean? Announce. So this is what I mean when I say, like, you gotta learn to connect the dot with the definite words that you're being asked. Or like part of the word that you see and then sort of connect the dot this way, having the meaning, that would be it. And that's what we call like a clue, but that's like something that we're gonna be going over during the summer. Again, 29 asks you about the word Newfoundland or crossbill. Guess what? The following question, answers to the following question, mention the word Newfoundland. Number 20, the answer was C. It talked about supply. 39, also it's about supply. But once you recognize supplies, like using build to get food, right? And recognizing the word supply, 29 should be easy. C is the answer. So I just noticed that, you know, Leonard got 30 wrong, but I expect her and then rest of you not get 30 wrong because like you're using what's given basically for free. Newfoundland. So at least you need to sort of like look at D closer than other choices. That's what I mean by like looking at choice questions. Try to develop better understanding of the passage by looking at the questions. What remember questions are asking. Again, I'm picking this test because like there are a lot of stuff that that you had to sort of like connect, or if you take time to see, you could connect. Question 14, it talked about mundane, but in that sentence had talked about many have traveled great distance, and that's what 15C is about. And again, when you get the answer for like this vocabulary context question, you need to look for a clue. Reveal basically means discover.